The next few minutes, I'm going to show you the U.S. nuclear target map, where you'll find out if you're living in one of America's death zones. Once a nuke is heading your way, you might think that there isn't much left to do. But you would be wrong, because I'll show you America's natural nuclear bunkers that are also EMP-proof. When the sirens start wailing, all you need to do is pick the closest one to your home where you can take cover before it hits. Sometimes, shelter is so close, but you have no clue about it. You could be sitting right on top of it this very second. That's the case in Detroit, where just 1,200 feet below the city, there's a salt mine outfitted with everything you need, and that could easily shelter the entire population of the city. Other cities like Houston and Cleveland are also situated over similar salt mines. In fact, every state has at least 5 natural nuclear bunkers, and I'm willing to bet at least one is within a life-saving distance from your house. But that's not all, because I'll show you an ingenious method of having a unique kind of root cellar in your backyard or under your house that is designed to also protect you from disasters like famines, hurricanes, EMPs, looters, tornadoes, bullets, and even fallout and radiation after a nuclear blast. Most importantly, it will preserve your water and food reserves year-round, just like your grandparents' root cellars. But it's a lot easier to build. In fact, it's the coolest thing I've ever added to my small backyard. My name is Tom Griffith. I'm a retired 60-year-old nuclear safeguard inspector, and I'm by no means a doomsday prepper. I do prepare, but the old-fashioned way, just like our grandparents did when they put aside some food each year for winter or hard times. Many years ago, when my hands became progressively stiffer with arthritis, I knew that bugging out was no longer an option for me. Leave that to the young people who are still able to deal with the many hardships of living isolated in the woods. And even for the young, this should be a last resort. Bugging out to live off the land is a fairy tale for most. What are you going to do when 10,000 other folks bug out to your part of the woods? Bye-bye game animals, fish, or edible plants. Or if someone assumes they will bug out to the country, we of the country are not going to be that welcoming of intruders on our property. Bugging out and not belonging to that area could get you killed quicker than any of the other reasons. Now, you probably don't consider your small neighborhood or dead-end street a community, but let some disaster happen, and you'll see humans come together for safety and support, at least in the beginning. Listen, even if you have only 2 weeks' worth of food and water at home, that is nothing to sneeze at. So my advice is to find a way to stay at home and bug in. Leave only if you really have to, and only after I've shown you where you can find the closest natural bunker to your home. Our grandparents had their root cellars, and not only did they have supplies for months there, but it was also a place to take shelter when a storm hit or in times of crisis. So I decided to find a simple way to have a root cellar where I can keep all my stockpiles and everything that I grow in my backyard without it spoiling, but also to serve as a shelter for me and my family, one that can withstand hurricanes, tornadoes, and even nuclear fallout. It also had to be hidden from looters after an EMP and supplies you with food and water in an economic crisis, safety during civil unrest, or anything else you can think of. I also wasn't planning on breaking my back building it either. My arthritis wouldn't agree. So I started looking for solutions. Now, some of the ideas I found were just crazy, but at least a few seemed doable and were cheap enough to give them a go. First, I tried a buried shipping container. Ever wonder what really happens when you bury a shipping container? Man, it was hard. It might sound like a good idea, but please don't ever try this unless you have at least $4,000 lying around and are prepared to work intensively for a whole month. And even if you build it, you'll soon find out that it was all for nothing. As you can see, the weight of the ground caused the curbside walls of the container to buckle in. Shipping containers can hold a lot of weight, but only on the corners, not on the sides. Here's a closer look. And don't forget about the water. What if the shipping container collapses and buries everyone inside? What if a secure shelter suddenly becomes a death trap for you and your entire family? Luckily, there's a better way. Way better, way cheaper, way safer, but most importantly, way easier than burying a shipping container. And it's also waterproof, so no matter how close the water table is, it won't bother you one bit. But just like you, I didn't know about it. Yet. Sure, there are other ways to make a root cellar or a bunker, but they are either too time-consuming or too expensive, $10,000 or more. I was just about to give up on my dream of having an old-style root cellar. Then something really strange happened. One day I saw my neighbor Jerry slowly climbing out from somewhere below his backyard. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but looking closely I saw stairs leading into the ground and realized he must have built something, like a hidden basement. To say I was intrigued would be an understatement. Why? Jerry is a 70-year-old disabled war veteran living on a fixed income. He became a prisoner of war after stepping on a mine and losing his leg in Nam. For a whole year, he was taken from camp to camp and bunker to bunker and endured incredible hardships. Through forced labor, hunger, and constant beatings, Jerry found one thing to focus on to keep himself sane. He planned to escape one day and reveal all he had seen and learned during his captivity. One thing in particular caught his eye more than anything else: the bunkers being built with a speed and ease Jerry had never seen before. When he served in the U.S. Army, Jerry helped build the American bunkers, which took 5 men working for weeks to make and were quite exposed. The Vietnamese bunkers, on the other hand, were completely different. You see, the Viet Cong had become master builders because they were forced to adapt to some of the deadliest conditions known to man. They didn't have bricks or mortar, but they still managed to build underground shelters that were strong enough to withstand the constant pounding of powerful American bombs. This is where they kept all their food and tactical supplies. The Viet Cong bunkers were so efficient that the CIA estimated that for every 100 bombs dropped on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, just one North Vietnamese soldier died. On the day he was rescued, Jerry weighed 95 pounds at the most. He was so fragile they had to feed him through a tube for days. The intel he provided on enemy tactics ended up saving countless American lives, so the Army gave Jerry a medal and a plane ticket back to the U.S. While the war was soon over and American soldiers were happily returning to their families, for Jerry, the struggle continued. Things that most people take for granted don't come easy at all for Jerry. Losing his leg early in life meant he had to learn to do things differently, without hard physical work or breaking the bank. Jerry never complained about his disability and never asked for or expected help from anyone. He is truly a hero, but he never bragged about it. Instead, he is probably the most self-reliant man I know. What he built in his backyard was a unique kind of root cellar. But here comes the truly shocking part. It only took Jerry a week to get it done, on his own. When I went down the stairs, I felt as if I had traveled back in time, right to my grandfather's root cellar. While smaller, at probably 150 square feet, everything else was exactly the same. Even that old smell I missed so much. Jerry had all sorts of cans, rice, beans, and jerky hanging from the ceiling, but he also had modern supplies like Progresso soup, pasta, peanut butter, dry goods, candles, water bottles, meds, an AR-15, a really big ammo box, and a lot more that I'll tell you about soon. Jerry affectionately called it his life cellar, and I could really see why. This thing could keep you and your whole family alive for months, even years, with no outside help. He also improvised a homemade ventilation system. When I examined it closely, I realized that his so-called charcoal life vent would actually be able to filter out almost everything you can think of, including radioactive particles. By this point, I was dead curious to find out just how my one-legged old neighbor had achieved all this in one short week. A generous and kind man, in spite of the many horrors he had witnessed, Jerry smiled and offered to share everything he knew with me. The life cellar he had built in his backyard was a brilliant mix of three things. 1. Jerry had always wanted to have an old-fashioned root cellar just like his great-grandparents had. This is where they kept all their harvest from spoiling. They had healthy, nutritious food on their table year-round. The problem with this kind of root cellar is that they are quite flimsy and can become a death trap in anything more than a storm, and they are not that easy to build. 2. The second thing Jerry considered was the temporary American Army bunkers. They had a tactical advantage and provided safety from bullets, shock waves, and floods. More than that, they were made out of inexpensive materials. But on the other hand, they were exposed in plain sight and were not that easy to build either. 3. And the third most important part was the Viet Cong's secret method of building hidden, quick bunkers which were so easy to build that two people could build one in less than a day. They don't look like much from the outside because they blend in with the environment, but they are incredibly resilient to bombardment, grenades, and shelling. They also had a second exit so those inside would never get trapped, but they did not make use of good enough materials for these to last for more than a few short years. Jerry did something very sharp and inventive. His cellar had all the benefits of our great-grandparents' root cellars, the American Army war bunkers, and the secret Viet Cong building method, with none of their drawbacks. His cellar was so cool that I definitely needed to have one in my own backyard. To make a long story short, using his method and having him by my side helping me with all the directions, I made my own cellar. It took me 4 days to build and only cost $421, which is less than a month's rent and will last a lifetime. I ended up having an awesome, completely equipped 150-square-foot cellar. Most Americans only need a 50-square-foot cellar, which can be made with only a fraction of the money and time that I spent on mine. My wife, who just days before was shaking her head when I started to build it, saying I was crazy and that it would take a lot of work, was now rushing to and from the pantry to bring in our supplies. I felt an enormous sense of pride, not only because it looked just like I wanted, but also because now I knew that my family and I would have a safe haven filled to the brim with everything we would need to survive even the worst crisis. That's why I thought you and every fellow citizen should have one in your own backyard. And Jerry wholeheartedly agreed. Together, we set out to share this life-saving information with as many Americans as we could. Americans who want to be more self-sufficient, 100% prepared, and less dependent on the government, the grid, and Walmart chains. We called it the Easy Cellar. It's like having a 24/7, no matter what, Walmart in your backyard that only you know about. Here's what you'll discover in the Easy Cellar program. First of all, we made this blueprint as simple as possible so that it would be a no-brainer. Just like me, you'll have Jerry on your side telling you exactly what to do until you finish your backyard Easy Cellar. You'll have unlimited access to our videos, our plans, and our instructions, and you can call Jerry to ask him anything about your project as part of our program. Just imagine the exact spot in your backyard where you will soon have your old-fashioned root cellar. When stepping down those stairs, the cold air will take you back in time at least 100 years, when every house in America had one to store everything our great-grandparents grew or bartered for. It kept everything from spoiling without electricity, and it will do the same for you. You'll have fresh, healthy food right off the shelf to feed your whole family. Not to mention that it will look so cool that all your friends will bombard you with questions about it. The Easy Cellar was specifically designed to be hidden away from prying eyes or looters. So even if you're outnumbered and surrounded with nowhere to run, you'll always have this secret place to go to, where nobody will find you. So how will you feel when 5 looters are ravaging your house to be able to observe them safely while tucked away in your concealed bunker? And even if FEMA comes for your supplies to redistribute them, they can't steal supplies they don't know are there, because your cellar will be invisible. The Easy Cellar will serve as a perfect storm shelter, too. You and your family can always take cover there, even from F5 tornadoes or Category 5 hurricanes. After these catastrophic events that tear down houses and cause weeks of blackouts, you won't have to sleep on the floor of some high school or stadium crammed in with thousands of other empty stomachs. Instead, you'll still eat delicious food 3 times a day and stay safe, all thanks to your Easy Cellar. I will show you exactly what to store in your Easy Cellar so you can have everything you need to stay inside for 3 months. That's right, if you don't want to leave or it's dangerous to go outside, you and your family can outlast any crisis from the inside. You'll learn how I made my own odorless toilet and reliable sink in less than 60 minutes. I personally tested my Easy Cellar. For 1 week, I closed myself inside just to see if I needed anything else. Believe me, sometimes no TV can be a good thing. I had my radio with me, though. It was one of the most relaxing and carefree weeks I've ever had. I would have stayed longer, but I didn't want to diminish my food reserves for nothing. You'll also discover how to use an ingenious method to safely store large quantities of water. A method that was used by our great-grandparents, too. You see, with no direct sunlight and the cellar's low temperature, water doesn't spoil easily. But using this method will keep your water fresh almost forever. The Easy Cellar might be easy to build, but it's a nightmare for anyone who would try to break in. In that regard, it closely resembles a panic room. Plus, whoever gets in gets shot. Anyway, you probably won't find yourself in that situation because, as I said, no one will find the entrance unless you show them. As you know, one of the most important parts of any cellar is the ventilation system. This is one of the things that I'm most proud of because I took Jerry's ventilation system and tweaked it, and now it filters anything a professional nuclear biological chemical filter would. You'll never have to worry about any airborne contaminants getting into your Easy Cellar, not even nuclear fallout. Plus, in our program, you'll find my step-by-step system to survive in your Easy Cellar after a nuclear blast. Chances are you won't be directly hit. What you need to worry about is the nuclear fallout and when it's safe to go outside. Contrary to popular opinion, while immediately after a nuclear explosion, radiation levels skyrocket for hundreds of miles, they dissipate very quickly compared to a nuclear power plant meltdown. That's why they rebuilt Hiroshima and Nagasaki in just a few months, but Chernobyl is still a ghost town 30 years later. Nuclear bomb fallout doesn't stay dangerous forever. Its radioactivity falls exponentially. 1 hour after detonation, the fallout is fatal after just 50 minutes of exposure. After just 7 hours, the radiation level will have fallen so much that it will cause only radiation sickness. After 49 hours, it's almost safe to go outside. 2 weeks after the attack, you can be exposed for several hours a day without serious risk of radiation sickness. A year after the attack, radiation levels will be close to normal background levels. So you won't need to stay hidden in your Easy Cellar for years. After 1 month, you can start spending a considerable amount of time outside. Plus, you'll also discover 15 natural remedies for radiation that you can keep in your Easy Cellar. The principle for protecting the body from the absorption of nuclear isotopes is the law of selective uptake. Reduced to bare bones, it means that radioactive isotopes look like nutrients to the body. So, if the body is deficient, it will grab hold of the isotope and use it in the body. You can prevent this absorption by taking extra doses of the nutrients you need. For example, iodine supplements protect against iodine isotopes. Cesium-137 mimics potassium in the body. Strontium-90 mimics calcium. Plutonium-239 mimics iron, and so on. The 15 foods that you'll find in our blueprint are critical.